I'd like to give you some tips for drawing this brick wall. Now, you might be wondering, why are we doing this? Why are we not drawing a whole building? Well, this brick wall gives us some practice with some of the kinds of thinking that you might have to do as a drafter or a designer, figuring out how do you fit things together and how do you draw things. So it gives you some of that thinking exercise, but it's not so complicated that it's just horrible. So I'm thinking of this as a kind of a compromise. So we are going to start with a drawing. I've given you a title block, and we'll go look at the title block at the end of this conversation. It has a different set of layers in it and the styles all set up, so this will be better. So here's what your finished wall is going to look like. And think about, well, let me back up. So you're staring at all this glop, and the first thing to think is, where the heck do I even start? That's a common issue with doing a drawing. Where do I start? And you notice right here, there's an L-shaped block that's not too fussy. So if it were me, and it was at one time, that is where I would start, with that concrete L-shaped thing. And we have a layer. It's L for landscape. I could have used C for civil, but I used L. So we'll use the layer L-wall, and we'll draw that L-shaped thing. And you have enough dimensions here that you could draw that thing. At least you could draw part of it. Let's think about some more. Because the bricks are going to give us some sizes too. Now in this wall, we're using a standard 3/8 thick mortar. You know, that concrete-like stuff made out of cement that goes in between the bricks. So anyway, the mortar is 3/8 of an inch thick. And the way these bricks are, they are sized so that you have a module that's 4 by 8 when you've got the mortar in there. If they made just the brick by itself 4 by 8, then tolerances would accumulate and it would be hard to figure things out. So they're set up so that with a 3/8 mortar joint, these bricks will wind up being 8 inches long with mortar, 4 inches thick with mortar, and 2 5/8 wide with mortar. Well, you'll notice we got two different sizes of bricks going on here in this drawing, so what's that about? What that is about is, when you think about a brick, notice that it's got 3 different dimensions. There's the length, which will be 8 inches once you get mortar in there. It's got a longer width that will be 4 inches when you get mortar in there, and it's got a thickness which will be 2 5/8 when you get mortar in there. And in this wall, they have turned these bricks up on edge, so we're seeing the 4 by 8 face of this thing on the top. These are on edge. Then on the face of the wall, they have turned them so that we're looking at the smaller end view of the brick. These are all the same bricks, they're just turned different directions. So if I put numbers at the bottom of this slide, if you wanted to think about how big are the bricks without the mortar, 8 inches minus 3/8, the length is 7 5/8, 4 inches minus 3/8, the height is 3 5/8, and 2 5/8 minus 3/8, the thickness is 2 1/4, if you prefer that. So here is one of the thinking exercises in this drawing. How do you get from those sizes that you know to everybody being in here in the right place? And I would suggest that the 2 commands that will probably work the best are offset, maybe just offset, or maybe offset and copy. You might draw one brick and then offset and then copy. One thing about college that we all learn the hard way is that nobody teaches you anything really. It's you getting in there and wrestling with a thing that you're learning about that winds up doing the learning. And that took me a long time to learn. I thought I would just give the college some money, they would give me a degree, and they would pour stuff into my brain and it would be full. And it turned out, no, it's not that. So I just want to say, go forth and give it a try. I know it's going to be challenging and maybe even frustrating, and you'll say, why don't you just tell me what to do? And the answer is because your designer brain cells are going to get stronger if you get in here and wrestle with these stupid bricks. All right. In the middle of the concrete wall, there's a piece of rebar. Rebar is short for reinforcing bar. That's that textured round steel bar that you see in the middle of concrete foundations and walls. And I've given you a layer. It's L-rebar. That gives you a thick line. So you can draw this L-shaped thing on the L rebar layer. They tell you that the rebar has to be at least 3 inches in from each edge. It can be farther, but it has to be at least that far. And that's so you don't get cracks in the concrete and water seeping in, and then the rebar rusts, and then the wall disintegrates and the building falls down. So we have to keep that distance. I think they don't tell you that it's 3 inches from the top. You could make it that height if you wanted to. They do not tell you what the radius is on here. You could try a fillet radius of 1/2 inch and see how you like that. Maybe some of you who have worked in rebar know what a standard radius is, and if so, please tell us in one of our forums. Now, there's also an end view of a piece of rebar here in this bend, and this is number 4 rebar. And down here at the bottom of the slide, you see here's how the stuff is sized. Number 4 means the diameter is 4/8, so it's 1/2 inch. So that's a 1/2 inch circle there. May I suggest you try a donut command in AutoCAD? You used a donut with the Recreation Center, I believe. So you could set the inside diameter at 0 and the outside diameter at 1/2 inch, and that will give you a good donut. Then use the hatch layer for all these patterns. And I think they don't give you a dimension for this hatch pattern. You just kind of make it the thickness you would like. The hatch should match the drawing scale factor, but it doesn't, and I have not figured out why. These are the scales I used for my hatch, and it looks like this. So you could try those scales if you like. You might prefer a different hatch scale. If so, go for it. It's fine. And let me know if you figure anything out about the hatch. Now let's go look at our drawing briefly. Oh, I forgot to say one more thing. I gave you a layer called L-profile, L-prof, which is a thick line. That's a profile line, and a profile line is an extra thick line that you draw around the outside of the thing where these surfaces intersect the air, and it gives it a nice finished look. So do that with your profile layer. And then add leaders and dimensions. I've already set the dimension style and the leader style to the right scale, so you won't have to fool with that. And now I'm going to go over to AutoCAD and show you this. We're going to open our viewport, or click Model Space. we're going to get our brick wall located in here. Then we'll set our viewport scale, and our scale for this drawing will be 1 to 10. Notice that's an engineering unit. Then we'll make sure we close our viewport immediately so we don't accidentally screw anything up. And we'll add this title stuff to the paper space. Now you could add the title stuff in model space, but you'd have to do some calculation to figure out what height to make the text so it would scale properly. It's really much easier just to do it in paper space to begin with. Make a 3/4 inch circle, make the title a 1/4 inch high, make the stuff in the bubble and the scale an 1/8 inch high, and it will look good. Oh, and use the dimension layer. And make sure you put your name in the title block. So now let's look at the title block that I've given you. So when you open it, it will look like this, except you won't have a title on it. I've already put one on there. And you'll notice that I've given you a whole different set of layers. You've got annotation layers for dimensioning and so forth. And you've got some landscape layers that we looked at earlier. And I've already set the line weights for you. So I've already drawn my wall. Let me zoom a little bit there. I've already drawn my wall, but I don't see my wall, so I need to get it into my paper space somehow. So I'm in the Layout tab here, the B sheet thing. I'm going to double click inside. Now watch what happens to this Paper tab when I double click inside. Look at that, it changed to model space and some other stuff showed up. And my viewport frame has gotten thick. So that means I have opened my window, my viewport, into model space, and now I'm in model space. But where is my drawing? Well, I could pan and, you know, oh, look, there it is. What I like to do is I like to type Z for zoom. And notice all these options. I then type E for extents, and extents brings you to the full extents of whatever you drew. So that's a good way to find your drawing. But that's not the right scale. So now I'm going to come down here to this drop-up list, and I'm going to select my scale, and for this drawing it will be 1 to 10. There we go. And if I need to, I will then pan a little bit to get it wherever I want it. And now the very next thing I do before I touch anything else is I'm going to close my viewport. And I could do that by clicking this tab, or I could double click outside, which is what I usually do. I have already set up the graphic scale for you here to the right numbers. Make sure you come over here to the title block thing. I'll zoom in. I've got my name in there, so you want to change it to your name. And you can do that by double clicking, which opens the text editor, or you can type ED for edit, which also opens the editor. And then here in paper space, here is my title that I drew in paper space. And to make this circle, let me make another circle just to be cool. So I made a circle. I'm going to type C, enter, but you could come up here, C, enter. And I'll click it somewhere. What radius? I'm going to go D for diameter, and I'm going to go 3/4. There's my circle. Now, hopefully, you have a quadrant O-snap, and if you do, then when you come in to make your line here, you can go line, and snap to that quadrant, and now it's easy